Support for the show comes from Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to building a more equitable, democratic, and prosperous North Carolina.
You can learn more about their vision and values at carolinaforward.org.
North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray. Well, hey, man.
Hello, hello. Today, we have our first guest in the studio.
That we do.
We just keep having a series of firsts on the podcast.
I like
right?
those.
So we just had our first episode of you and I in the studio, and now we have our first guest.
That's right.
So let's introduce the guest by reading something the guest has written.
Fair.
This is not a bio. We do have a bio. We'll get to that. But I want to read from this article about urban sprawl and land use.
All right.
A topic that I think, and I think we agree on this, is of crucial importance to every community in North Carolina, and I mean the country.
That's right.
But I think people hear the word urban sprawl, land use, and they start to conk out, and
Especially here in Alabama.
Yeah. All right. So our guest said one of the back burner issues that surfaced for the first time during the recent presidential election was how to address urban sprawl. And the years to come, as we learn more about our impact on the environment, including global warming, transportation costs, this topic will move to the forefront. It is important that we take the necessary steps in Alamance County to address this issue now before it becomes a major concern later. Alamance County is one of the few urbanized counties left in North Carolina that does not have a county-wide land use plan. As more and more people call Alamance County home, and that is happening. I mean, this county is exploding. If you've driven through Mebane recently or Elon, as more and more people call Alamance County home, we have to look at making long-term plans for our county that benefit the majority and not just a few of us. Development cannot be driven from only short-term economic growth and profits. Land use planning for Alamance County is a must, and we need to make it a priority of our newly elected county commissioners. This is 20 years ago. This article was published in December 2000, and you read it and you think this is today.
Right.
I mean, if it was a concern in 2000, it's only grown in importance.
Right.
So with that being said, Quinn, would you do us the honor and introduce our special guest for today's episode of the Hometown Holler?
Yeah, I'm excited that we have Mr. Eric Henry in the studio today. Mr. Henry is the CEO of TS Designs in Burlington, North Carolina, a company dedicated to manufacturing premium apparel through a local, transparent, and trackable supply chain. With over 40 years of industry experience, he has seen apparel transition from a primarily domestic industry to a globalized model in which over 97% of our clothing is produced overseas. Driven by his hometown values, Eric is on a mission to radically change the apparel industry for the good of the people and the planet. In addition to leading TS Design, Eric has served on several boards in Alamance County. He has served on the Alamance Chamber of Commerce, the NC Green Power, Green America, Business for Local Living, the Board of Piedmont Land Conservancy, and Alamance County Planning Board.
He has a lot of time on his hands.
Yeah, sure. That's what it sounds like.
You need to get a hobby, Eric.
Eric, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It's an honor to be your first one.
Yes,
So,
yes.
What a great day.
Yeah, well, we have a lot we want to talk about. Obviously, I open with what you wrote about land use and zoning, but we also want to talk about your experience as an entrepreneur in Alamance County, the company that you built and you're continuing to build and expand. So we have a lot to get into, but could we begin by talking about how you got into sustainability?
Oh, it's a couple of things. First of all, I was very fortunate. Growing up, my grandfather got me into backyard gardening. And talk about backyard gardening back in the early 70s, probably 60s, it was organic by default.
Yeah.
So there was not thing as this commercial agriculture where you basically put some magic dust on that and fixes everything and kills everything and all that. So help me. We developed that, right? My mom is still with me. She's be 91 this year. She lives about 6 blocks from here.
Okay.
The house I grew up in. But basically started doing some gardening behind. So that was my connection to the environment. So you can say I've probably been a tree hugger all my life. But then really it galvanized on an event that happened on January 1, 1994. Again.
Hold on, let me see if I can guess what that might have been. January what?
January 1, 1994.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
Do you? Okay, well, hold on. This is like the history teacher in me. Every time, anytime a date is thrown out. And by the way, I want to tell our listeners, you're not just you wear your gardening on your sleeve. You are literally here, and you just came from the garden.
Yes, this is farm.
And if we could also get you to speak, it's there you go, directly. There you go, perfect. Yeah. But no, Eric is here in full garden regalia. Okay, January 1st, 1994. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. And I also know that you're in the apparel industry. Is that NAFTA?
You got it.
Is that right? Oh, look at that. Cool.
And what does NAFTA stand for?
North American Free Trade Agreement, not Fair Trade Agreement.
Free
it's
trade.
a free trade agreement, and that's an important distinction. Okay, so that was an inflection point for you,
right? Because we saw it coming, and Burlington was a big textile community. This was Burlington Industry, one of the largest textile companies in the world, was founded here. So this was an agreement between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. And so I'll never forget a few years prior to that, there were all these meetings and stuff about how this agreement's going to really expand the textile industry. I'll never forget I was in Greensboro with all the, fortunate there with the executives of Burlington Industry and Guilford Mills, the two largest textile industries in the world at the time. And they're talking, this is going to expand our market. And I leaned over my business partner, Tom Saineth, who founded TS Designs, and I said, that person in Mexico that's making at that time maybe $5 a day, $6 a day, they're not going to buy a $30 Nike T-shirt. So we knew exactly what was going to happen, and it did happen. So January 1, 1994 rolls in. Within 2 years, we laid off over 100 of our 120 employees. The brands that we were working with, Tommy, Nike, Gap, Polo, Adidas, they were all gone. And it destroyed not only our community, destroyed the textile business. And as Quinn said earlier, it's actually 98% now our clothes made overseas. That's where we've ended up.
right?
And so that was kind of the thing that I built a business, focused on taking care of the people, making a great product, and obviously being profitable. But, overnight, it got pretty much taken away. So we were an early...
Pissed.
Pissed, but also I think an opportunity to say, we need to build business differently. So we're an early adopter of what they call the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. So that, and again, we were talking back before, sustainability wasn't in our conversation. Climate change wasn't in our conversation. Fast forward to today, that's what we need from business. It is about making money, but business also has responsibility to people and planet. And so it's more important than ever. And, I'm all in favor of a capitalist system and letting business, but there has to be checks and balances to impact the people and planet.
Well, I think there are a couple of things there. One, going back to the article, you were talking about, how does it feel to have spent so long talking about sustainability, climate change, taking care of our environment, and now it's fashionable. Now it seems like it's more in vogue, or at least it's mainstream. Does it feel, is it exciting to see people catching on? Is it kind of like, y'all, I've been saying this for years. Where have you been? How does that feel to have it finally hit the mainstream?
It is exciting that the word sustainability is welcome conversations in schools and universities and things like that. The challenge is we're talking, but we're not acting. And the longer we put it off, it's very similar to what's happening with climate change. We knew climate change existed 15, 20 years ago, but we kept, I'm not really sure, whatever. We kept pushing out. But the impact is becoming greater and greater, and so far the challenges to address it are becoming greater and greater. And again, very similar to what's happening with that article you read in 2020, the zoning or the land use planning we have in Alamance County is going to be a heck of a lot more difficult now because if you've built there, they're not going to make you come tear it down.
Right, that's right.
But, I like to describe Alamance County as a Swiss cheese of chaos when it comes to our land use plan because, we had an opportunity, just like climate change, we have an opportunity to plan better, to bring all those voices to the table, to work this thing out. But no, we just we'll let the marketplace figure this thing out. And again, very similar to where we are with climate change, we'll just let the marketplace the marketplace needs rules and guidelines.
Yeah.
It cannot be just free enterprise and do whatever you want to do.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about this recently in a conversation we had, and it's not free enterprise because it's not a level playing field.
Right.
The T-shirt that I'm wearing right now, I would bet you anything that came from Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, Mexico. I didn't pay the true cost of this T-shirt. No. I will just admit that, right? And so to me that's not capitalism because there's no competition there, right? I mean, in order for it to be capitalism, I would actually have to pay the true human cost, environmental cost of this T-shirt, and that's something that you really model in your business is delivering a high quality product where consumers actually see a transparent supply chain and understand what it takes to bring a product like in the apparel world to market.
Well, and he literally models it. If you go to his Instagram, there's a picture of him modeled from head to toe of local apparel from where he got it. So that's pretty cool.
Could you talk a little bit about the supply chain that kind of I think is distinctive about TS Designs? I mean, the average T-shirt like this one I'm wearing traveled 20,000 miles
at least.
Yeah. If I were to go to TS Designs, in fact, we have a beautiful TS Designs T-shirt with the Hometown Holler logo.
They'll be on our website soon.
It'll be on our yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if folks want to wear one of those T-shirts, what do they need to know about it?
Well, the fortunate thing, or lucky thing, I should say, I started a business, when I was at NC State in 1978, so had no idea where we would be today in regards to impact, technology, things like that. And so we're very fortunate. North Carolina, as I like to describe, is the best place in the world at the intersection of agriculture and apparel. And so almost 20 years ago, we reached out to a cotton farmer. Okay, let me roll back. When NAFTA rolled in, realized they're not going to be a low-cost producer. So we focus on how do we create the highest quality, most sustainable print apparel. We're very fortunate that we live in a state that grows cotton. So probably about 20 years ago, I reached out to Ronnie Burleson at the time, now work with his son Andrew, and said, listen, I would like to buy your cotton. And I never forget, they says, why does a little bitty T-shirt company in Burlington, North Carolina want to buy my cotton? Because you get all the cotton T-shirts. At that time, it was 1-800 some number, and now it's on the internet. And I says, I want to know where my cotton goes. And so the only way to do that, I always say, I'm never going to grow it, gin it, spin it, knit it, finish it. So, but we buy the cotton from the farmer. And then we have somebody on our team that facilitates that process, as we describe dirt to shirt.
Dirt to shirt. Yeah, that's great. I love that.
but we're lucky we can do it all in North Carolina. 700 miles. And then...
well, your supply chain is 700 miles.
Yes.
Compared to 30,000 for the average. That's amazing.
But the biggest benefit, and it's not that I complain. I was speaking last night in Chapel on an ag board panel or something like that. We live in a global economy, and we're not putting that genie back in the bottle.
Yep, that ship has sailed.
But what we need to demand is transparency of where our food and energy and clothes come from. Give the consumer that information so you're not guessing. And that shirt most likely is made overseas, but you're going to get some country that it was last at, Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, whatever. But that could be North Carolina cotton.
Right.
There's no idea.
Why should I care about that?
Well, hold on. So you're saying that it's possible that the fabric I'm wearing was grown regionally and then sent to Asia.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Over 80% of the cotton is getting ready to go up to about 90% soon. That's grown in this country, leaves this country before it's a finished product. It leaves its fiber, leaves its yarn, leaves its fabric, because what the apparel industry wants to, how do we take advantage of cheaper global labor?
Right.
So literally we ship
Sweatshops.
stuff. We ship stuff all over the world. But again, too, I'm not saying it's a sweatshop, but give the consumer. The consumer's making an investment in your clothes.
Right.
You spent money to that, so the brand owes it to you to say, here are the keys where it's made. And again, it is going to be overseas, and that's fine. But you need to be able to have access to that facility in Vietnam that you can send somebody a text or send somebody an email or go to web. You're not going to go there, but at least we have this curtain that completely hides the brands behind the manufacturing, and then all you see is the pretty pictures, the athletes wearing it, or all these great things they're doing. There's no transparency, and it's no different than our food, because when I leave here, I go shopping.
So I get the food, right? I understand needing to know where my food came from because I'm about to put that in my body,
right?
But I mean, this shirt feels good.
Yeah.
Like I don't care where it came from.
I will say this: the TS Design shirts feel much better. I mean, those shirts are very
Sure,
yeah.
and I'm just
But I
playing
get what
devil's
you're saying, yeah.
advocate here.
Right, yeah.
Well, why do I need to care where my stuff came from? Have that transparency, because if it feels good and it's cheap to me, what is the benefit of knowing this as the consumer?
Because in a global economy, there's a lot of bad things happening out there. So yeah, that shirt might feel good, look good, or whatever, but it could be put together by slave labor Uyghurs in China.
It says save the planet, Eric.
Oh, I know. It's fine.
But you got it on Temu. So square that circle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem we got is that just, and I was on two congressional hearings last year around fast fashion. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway.
So you went up to Washington?
It was all Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
But one of the congressional staffers says, what can, we as people, and getting something done in D.C. these days is a little challenging. But I says, we don't need more regulations per se. We just need, you got carrying content on your T-shirts now by law, Federal Trade Commission. And they got this country of origin, which is meaningless information. Just require the brands to make their supply chains completely transparent and let the consumer decide. I can understand. Some consumers don't care. Some consumers have to shop by lowest price. I got that. But let's make that information available to the consumer, because what you find, and we're not a perfect company. There's always room, but there's no secrets.
Right.
And that's what you can go to a website, wearyourclothing.com, for your shirts too. Once you scan in that, and there's all the information.
And that's WHERE.
Yes.
It's interesting. I think apparel is in this way really far behind agriculture, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics. There are all these industries. I was in a bathroom washing my hands recently, and they had on the wall the soap was like cruelty free from this factory. Maybe it had all the all these details, and I'm wondering why apparel is so far behind, because it seems as if other industries, other consumer items, when you're with your food, there's a huge farm to table movement now. It's not uncommon to walk to a grocery store and there's an entire section for organic food, local foods. It's just strange to me that apparel is so far behind.
Yes.
Is there any legislation right now that is out there that you know of that can help bring transparency to the sector?
Yes, there's the Fabric Act, which I'm involved with, and then there's legislation coming out of the state of New York. The Fabric Act is a federal law, and again, it doesn't address everything, but at least they're trying to start having, because again, you can have sweatshops in the U.S. Just because it says made in USA doesn't mean it's always, hey, we're in the state that still pays $7.25 minimum wage.
What's the political pushback for not doing this right now, or is there? It seems like a pretty nonpartisan issue, I would think. So when you're trying to get this bill, or this bill trying to get passed in D.C., what is the pushback?
I don't think there is. It's just the Washington chaos. I think this week I've got a meeting with Senator Tillis's one of the staff folks is coming to town, and we're going to talk about this. So it just makes sense. I mean, why do you not? The whole thing now that we're dealing with is this Temu stuff and this stuff coming in from overseas with no duties, no tariffs, no regulations. All I ask, in business, I just want a level playing field.
Right.
I'll compete with anybody in the world, and we got to talk about price, but let's talk about environmental and social issues too. And the brands don't want to have that conversation, and that's the conversation to have. The only way we're going to do that, again, back to, we just need some guardrails in the economy that basically have certain rules and regulations and I guess back transparent supply chain. Just make that information available,
right,
and let the consumer have better education and make better choices.
You guys had a recognition last year by Our State Magazine.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners just a little bit about that? Because I think that's just a really neat factoid.
Well, as I said earlier, I think North Carolina is the best place in the world, being the intersection of agriculture and apparel. The only reason you would go somewhere else to get it cheaper. So last year, we partnered up with a farm up in Morganton called Fauna Flora that grew marigolds. And then we worked with another company out of Hickory that knitted a wool beanie, but it's called dead stock. So it's basically wool that basically didn't have a home. We brought that into TS Designs. We dyed these beautiful golden 100% wool beanies, completely in North Carolina, completely transparent supply chain. And then Our State Magazine picked it as their style product of the year in 2023.
Well, it had a different name. It was like the coolest product.
That's right. And y'all are about to. I've seen you working on another one. It's a beanie. It's like a bean beanie.
Oh, yeah.
Dyed with beans.
That's so cool.
Well, I think, if you haven't a chance yet, y'all check out. There's a documentary out that my friend just did called Common Ground. And it talks about the whole issues between industrial ag and regenerative ag.
We probably could put that on our website.
Yeah, and I know the director that did that. But anyway, what I was talking to Sing last night is that, that's another thing out there. There's all this agriculture material that we can utilize to make dyes. Why don't we do that? It's because we don't understand the real cost of synthetic dyes, which we don't make in this country. We have to be imported and have environmental issues. And again, there's so many opportunities when you look at product or a business at triple bottom line, that when you're only single bottom line would never have done that marigold beanie.
No.
That's too damn hard to do. But what we're trying to do is we will invite other people to think that you can do that, encourage other people to do that, because that's ultimately where we need to get to.
I want to pivot now to land use.
Yes.
Okay. So we opened with that article. That was 20 years ago.
A fun fact about that article that was written in City County Magazine, and my mom was the designer for City County Magazine
Really?
for like 20-some years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah, that's fun. That is a fun fact. Well, that you've clearly been following land use locally for some time now. We still don't have any kind of zoning
On the county level.
on the county level. On the county
Because
level,
the municipalities do.
sure, but as a local business owner, a significant business owner, I would add, how does land zoning impact you?
Well, my whole argument for years for land use planning, and some people call it the nasty word zoning, but it just lays out a future of what development's going to look like.
So
And-
it gives people a sense of what to expect.
Yeah, and I last week I met with the county manager, Cabarrus County. Years ago, he was county manager. And John did a phenomenal job and says, as I said in that article, this is not an anti-development article. Development's coming, and I'm not here to stop it. But what we need to do is we need to say, this is the areas we're going to develop, but we keep paving over our farmland. I mean, try to get, and plus, try to do farms in Orange County or Durham County or Guilford County. I mean, the land is getting less and less, and we do need access to food. And we understand what happens when COVID comes and those global disruptions.
Right.
You don't have access to it. You can't ship everything in. So I've always said, even when I wrote that article, and still is today, a tremendous agriculture opportunity for Alamance County. But again, we constantly look at our land as, what's the value? What's
Right,
the
as a
value
commodity,
today?
yeah.
Yes. And we don't look at, we need access to food pretty much as long as it's going to be here, but we keep paving over. And then unfortunately, because we have no land use planning or zoning, guess the kind of development a lot of times we get in our community, the places that other communities zoned out or wouldn't regulate or whatever. And a perfect example of that, it was 2 years ago, I believe, they came and did an open pit rock quarry.
That's right, down the snow
Down
camp.
the snow camp.
Right down the road from us. And I never forget, I went to that first public hearing, and people were just pissed off. And I got out there and I said, the problem we got, folks, is you can't go back and change the rules retroactive. If you buy the land under these rules, then you have the right to develop it. And so unless these people did something, illegal or whatever, which they didn't, you can't stop this. And here again, everybody got all upset about it, and there was tons of public hearings and spoke to our county commissioners. Nothing was done. And here we are again. And again, you see what's happening down in south of us with the Toyota Blaze and the Vietnam Car Company and the chip company. All this development's coming. And unfortunately, Alamance County, if we don't get our act together, especially southern Alamance County, we're going to be the dumping ground for development that nobody else wants.
So not only does land use development protect our farmers, right?
Yes.
So we can put zoning in saying let's protect our farmland. It also protects you as a resident. I get in the article you wrote, and I hear it all the time, where people are like, this is my land, let me do what I want. But then people get pissed when something comes in, because right now the NC legislator, they've put in rules with vested rights. And as long as the rules are followed by somebody, they can come in and put that slaughterhouse or rock quarry, like you said. And even if your local county leaders say, you know, this doesn't fit our vibe, this isn't what we want, they can't say no. They will get sued. And then they will get sued because of vested rights by rules that the state put into place. And so now you just lost a bunch of money because you tried to battle this in court. And then the development is still coming. So it's not to tell people what they can and can't do with their land. It's also to protect you from having that crazy rock quarry or that crazy development beside the land that you bought. You know, if we work together, we're trying to now in Alamance County because of this rock quarry, but it's such a grueling process, and people are freaking out because they're like, well, you can't tell me I need 2 trees in my yard. And it's like, it's not about that. It's about making sure that we're protecting your land and also making smart decisions, because development's coming. And if all you need is to get a septic tank and a well drilled, that's real easy shit to do.
Right.
Yeah, I think kind of underneath the surface, I do think there is a fear that with zoning, people hear zoning and they think land development, and nobody wants everybody wants everything to stay the same. And I think in people's heads they have this idea of, well, if we have zoning, all our land is going to get developed. Without zoning, maybe things will stay the same. And that's obviously not the case. It's not a choice between we either develop or we don't develop. Development is coming. It's a question of, you know, do we ride the horse or does the horse ride us?
That's right. That's right. So how does land development work in with like sustainability, especially for your business? Does it help at all? Is there a benefit to, you know, our town right now, because sustainability is hip, or it's finally coming around, we've put together a sustainability committee. They're getting ready to do a sustainability audit on our town. How are we as a town practicing sustainability? And we just got done writing our land development ordinances. We just updated those. So we took those in both accounts when we're trying to write this, of how we're going to do this with, you know, greenways and bike paths and working into that. How does this help entrepreneurs and businesses stay sustainable and also protect them? Like the cotton farm down, where is it? Richmond County or
Stanley County?
Stanley County. Yep. How would having land development ordinances help him stay sustainable or work towards a more sustainable future?
Well, 2 things. I mentioned John Day earlier and what they did down in Cabarrus County. Again, this is going back probably 15, 20 years. Is, again, they knew economic development was coming. They said, okay, let's make sure this section of the county, we don't want water sewage. As soon as you run water and sewage, it comes. So let's make sure this area stays agriculture, and just puts, you know, and they had many, many public hearings, but they said this area will be left for agriculture purposes and this area that we will develop. And it was very smart because then they just kind of separated those two things. But the other thing I like to say, Quinn, is, and I don't know where we got off track in my life, but somewhere along the way, you know, government used to be not picking winners or losers and not betting on the next thing, but that long-term planning, that long-term vision. Because as big business, small business, you've got more in-your-face things to address, payroll next week and things like that. So we need government to be that balance, to give us that long-term vision of where we want to go and where we need to be. And again, if I could roll back the clock, you know, when TS Designs built its building out the airport 35 years ago, you know, that was what everybody did. They go outside the county, there's an industrial park, you build a building, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we didn't factor in that quality of life thing. And so for Elsa, that's with us today, for her to get TS Designs, she has to drive a car. Anybody comes in, you got to drive a car. There's no sidewalks, there's no bike paths, there's no buses. So, you know, we're not thinking long term. And again, the other thing, there's a good friend of mine too, Michael Schumann. I think he's an economist and a lawyer. He wrote a book years ago called Small Mart, i.e. not Walmart. And but again, what he was really advocating to, not only this, but making sure your community is developing for the business that's long term they need. Because if you go through Alamance County down Interstate 85, well, we got a lot of these distribution centers.
Oh, yes, we do. Yeah. I mean, that's what happens when we're on the I-40 corridor.
And that model works now, but what's that going to look like 50 years from now? Are we bringing the businesses into our community that we need to be a more resilient, connected? If we just have a bunch of warehouses that are distribution points for brand A and brand B, what's that going to look like in 20 or 30 years? It's good now, great tax revenue now,
Sure.
But what we need to do, we're not doing that long-term planning. And zoning's a part of that. And so we can kind of map out, this is the area we're going to develop and whatever, but also in development, what are the businesses that we need in our community? And not just the one that can write the biggest check, or we also know get subsidies to come to North Carolina or Alamance County. There's all this, and again, they've done a lot of studies on that. You know, these subsidies to get businesses to come to communities or states rarely pay off. If they've done,
I didn't know that.
No, they, you know, you see all these headlines
About
of
tax
all,
incentives.
Oh, you see all the headlines, and again, back to Michael Schumann, that's written a bunch of books on this, but normally they don't check out, because usually they're like a 10-year period of time. You know, you hire that many employees, this many income. We know how the world changed so quickly. Right. And so, and that's a whole other thing, the whole economic incentives that we give for businesses. Right. I mean, that is just the race to the bottom again. You know, then you get actually, Quinn, you should know this, now municipalities are competing against these because we want to Elon, we want in Burlington. Right. And we're competing on getting a business to move across the county line so somebody gets this tax credit. I mean,
well, and ultimately, when we're doing that, it's still knocking out, the capitalist belief of being able to pull yourself up and make it. These tax incentives aren't helping TS design type people. These are helping giant corporations come in here. So if you're wanting to start your own small business, but you need that tax incentive, that help, man, you get looked over so quickly because you're like, oh, you're only going to bring in 20 jobs.
Right.
And so it's the haves and have-nots yet again in the corporation and small business separation.
Well, we are coming up on our time, 30 minutes. So before we leave, I want to thank Eric again for coming over, talking about all the work that remains to be done. But also, I want to thank you for talking about the apparel industry. That's something that I am involved with every day. I do most days. I wear clothes most days. So and to shine a light on kind of the hidden corners of that industry, I think is really important and will be really useful to our listeners. And I want to encourage all our listeners to go online, check out TS Designs, look at not just what they make, but what they do, who they are, their values. Because like you said, it's a triple bottom line. And that could you for our listeners again, repeat it? It's
people, planet, profit.
People, planet, profit. That's a sticker.
Yeah.
We're going to get those.
And y'all walk the walk and you talk the talk, and we're really appreciative for that, not just as folks who enjoy your clothing, but as neighbors who share this county with you. So Eric, thank you again for coming on the Hometown Holler.
Well, thank you for being your first guest.
Yeah.
And I think, as we said the other week when we were talking, it's so important to have these conversations, because I was saying last night, not one person has the answer. The answers lie in the community. So we got to have those conversations. We got to get out of our silos. We got to have those uncomfortable situations or conversations. I'm excited about what y'all guys are doing here. Just give this forum so we can get that information out, to expand that conversation, and we can widen that tent and make sure Alamance County is involved with what's going on.
Eric, thank you again. Folks, thanks for listening. Please remember to like, follow, subscribe. We're on social media at The Hometown Holler. You can also visit us at www.thehometownholler.com.